Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to impartially unpack a really fascinating and frankly provocative philosophical framework by author Su Feng. We're looking at a text called The 8 Logical Deductions of Hell. And what we're doing here is exploring how this author attempts to logically deduce the actual literal existence of hell. But he doesn't just use traditional theology. He uses these incredible metaphors from math, physics, nature, and human morality. It's a highly structured, almost mathematical argument. So let's unpack exactly how this logic is put together.
Right out of the gate, the text hits us with the ultimate existential question: does hell exist? What's so interesting here is the underlying premise and how quickly it establishes the stakes. Su Feng immediately frames the existence of hell as being just as fundamentally real and just as necessary as the existence of the human soul itself. The argument is that if you accept the concept of a soul, you are logically forced to entertain this exact question.
To break this all down, we'll start with the question of hell, move through math and physics metaphors, explore ancient cosmic dualities, dig into debt and justice, look at the Tao and ecological order, and finally wrap up with the ultimate equilibrium.
Let's jump right into Section 2, Math and Physics Metaphors. Okay, so the author's first deduction is all about basic physics. The universe, according to this text, operates on a strict zero-sum energy law. An action force, a positive one, plus a reaction force, a negative one, must equal exactly zero. Everything in reality must ultimately balance out to this absolute zero state.
So, what does this actually mean for us? Well, think of it like this. If heaven represents our positive energy, that +1, there absolutely, unequivocally must be a balancing negative energy, the -1. The text posits that a failure to have a hell would literally violate the fundamental zero-sum law of the universe. According to this deduction, the universal math simply wouldn't work without it.
Building on that, deduction number 2 pushes the math metaphor even further. The author explicitly calls mathematics the language of the universe. Picture a 3D coordinate system. If you locate heaven in a perfectly positive quadrant, XYZ, foundational spatial logic demands an opposing negative quadrant, -x, -y, -z. That perfectly opposite spatial reality is defined in this framework as hell.
Moving on to Section 3, Ancient Cosmic Dualities.
Now we're shifting away from strict math and leaning into Eastern philosophy. The author applies the principle of Taiji to our conceptual map. This principle dictates that literally everything has an opposite side and a virtual interface. If one side is up, the other is down. If one side is light, the other must be darkness. Shelfing suggests that across this interface of reality, if one side happens to be heaven, the opposite side must logically and structurally be hell.
Building right off Taiji, the text brings in the classic concept of yin and yang. The source material quotes that yin and yang are the parents of change and the foundational order of all things. The crucial takeaway here is the absolute requirement for symmetry between the material and non-material worlds. The argument posits that the yang of heaven absolutely requires the yin of hell to maintain cosmic balance. Without one side, the whole shebang collapses.
That brings us to Section 4, Debt, Justice, and Reality.
Here, we're bringing these massive abstract cosmic laws down to visceral human morality. The author introduces a strict law of debt balance. The text reads, "A murderer must repay with his life just like a borrower with money." Think about our own human craving for fairness for a second. How could massive evildoers ever truly be punished if hell doesn't exist? If people escape justice in their mortal lives, the cosmic math we discussed earlier demands a settling of accounts. Justice practically requires a downstream mechanism for punishment. To prove this isn't just some abstract theory, the text points to extreme worldly suffering as literal, earthly manifestations of hell. Take the truly tragic modern case of the chained girl found in Juju, or historical figures like Wu Zixu, whose hair reportedly turned white overnight from unbearable stress. The core argument here is that because we can actually see and feel these extreme hellish states in our physical reality, it provides logical proof that the grander concept of hell itself must exist.
Section 5, Tao and Ecological Order. Now we're zooming out once more to look at the absolute necessity of ecological cycles. Drawing from the Bible, the Tao Te Ching, and Buddha Sutras, the author outlines a totally impartial reward and punishment mechanism. True fairness relies on matching perfect individuals, those walking the way of the greatest creator, with their proper destination, heaven. Conversely, flawed individuals walking the way of the devil must be matched with hell.
The author argues that without both of these final destinations, the Tao itself just cannot act as a perfectly impartial judge.
Which brings us to ecology. Just like physical nature requires an incredible diversity of plants, animals, and microbes to maintain its vibrant life cycle, the human spiritual cycle requires a massive hierarchy. This spiritual ecosystem ranges all the way from the greatest creator and gods at the very top, down through mortals, domestic animals, and eventually, at the very bottom, ghosts.
And that leads to a really fascinating, almost surprising punchline to this eighth ecological deduction. Where do ghosts live? If this deeply diverse spiritual ecosystem genuinely contains ghosts, as so many global traditions claim it does, they logically need a habitat. And that habitat, the author deduces, is hell.
Finally, Section 6, the ultimate equilibrium.
Let's step back and synthesize how all these different deductions construct one unified worldview. Whether we're analyzing this through physical zero-sum forces, three-dimensional mathematics, or ancient cosmic dualities like yin and yang, Xufeng's entire framework points to one grand conclusion. The universe fundamentally relies on absolute equilibrium. You simply cannot have a light equivalent without a perfectly corresponding dark equivalent to balance the grand cosmic ledger.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, we want to leave you with a rather provocative thought regarding the very nature of existence. Based on this rigorous structural logic, is true cosmic justice even possible without an equal and opposite reaction to good? Does the universe actually require the darkness in order to define the light? It is a truly fascinating perspective on consequence. Thanks for joining us today, and until next time, keep questioning the world around you.